Water, only water. Water, only water. Where they see ma. Water, 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 water. Only water. Where they see ma. Hapa o naido. Hapa you don't come o. Hapa o naido. Oro keke elemu ye o. Ide sodi ya keke elemu re o. Bobby master keke elemu re o. Chifu Failati keke elemu re o. Eruku lele elemude. Eruku lele egbe elemudodo jare o. Eruku lele Ghana ti de everybody o. Ọmọ ẹlẹ́yẹ ẹyẹ o ó dilé o. Odúyẹ̀lá ẹyẹ o ó dilé o. Petrosoname ẹyẹ o ó dilé o. Petrosodunke ẹyẹ rẹ̀ ó dilé o. Ẹlẹ́kọ̀ ọ̀run mú ìní o. Àkùkọ ọ̀run mẹ́kọ̀. Ikú kò ní ríwà gbéṣe o.
And there it is right there. Ikú kò ní ríwà gbéṣe. There it is right there. Good day to you all. Today we'll be having two sessions. This session you're watching now is an experimental session just to introduce a new sort of conversation. Apologies, by the way, that's a security light. So if anything is running in my garden, that's probably a fox that's just run through. So if anything goes through the garden, the security light comes on. So it'll go off in a minute and there it is gone. So yes. So this is an experimental session, as I was saying, an experimental session. As you know, the Nigerian elections have come and gone, and of course, our conversations still to be had. So we are trying to expand the conversational space to a global space. So that's what this is all about. So there's a lot going on in the world, and a lot wrapped around what defines masculinity. So that is the space that we're looking to open up as a conversational space on this platform. There's a person, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. There's a person called Kevin Samuels. If you've not heard of him, actually, let me just give you a flavor of who he is. I'll probably get copyright struck for this, but let me give you a flavor of who he is, and then I'll continue with my opening salvo.
Y'all are all out of whack with how men think. This is why you can't get what you want from us, because you're valuing something up here that is a used vehicle with a lot of miles. Okay. Just because you hand washed it. You were 20-year-old hot. You had 20-year-old wound. You had 20-year-old body count. You had 20-year-old trauma. You had 20-year-old experience. That's what we value. That's all it comes down to for us.
But don't you feel like with those experiences, a person can add value to their life?
Men value your youth, your fertility, your purity, femininity, submission, ability to cooperate, and fitness. And all of that is at your highest in your youth. The older you get, the older you get. No product gets more expensive with time and use. Have you ever been to the pawn shop?
Yeah.
All right. You ever take something you really value to the pawn shop? And did that hurt your feelings when they told you how much it was worth?
Yes. I was like, what? Yeah.
That's you. We the pawn shop.
All right. So that was Kevin Samuels. I said that was Kevin Samuels because he's now deceased. But I'll take you to that space in a moment. But let me bring you up to speed with what is going on within that space. So that space started off with something called MGTOW, M-G-T-O-W, MGTOW. So what does that MGTOW mean? It means men go their own way. So that's what MGTOW means, men go their own way. So why are men going their own way? So now there's a slow ebbing away of traditional masculinity, so that men have no definition anymore. And as some men now, they are now becoming sort of anti-women, and then they've transmuted into something called MGTOW, men go their own way. So they transmuted into that. So from that space, we then entered into something. So that's the birthing of a new space, a new reclamation of traditional masculinity. So that's what that space is all about. The MGTOW movement, it was the birthing of the reclamation of traditional masculinity. So that was the birthing of that space. So now, fast forward, that has now transmuted into something that is now being defined as the manosphere or manosphere. So the manosphere now, or manosphere, is an umbrella term that refers to a number of interconnected misogynistic communities. It encompasses multiple types and severity of misogyny, from broader male supremacist discourse to men's right activism. So men's right activism, MRA, and involuntary celibate, incels. So those are terms that you'd have been hearing all over the space. So there's so we started with MGTOW, by the way, and I am waiting for a guest who I am hopeful will turn up, because he has a bit more expansion on the space. If we're able to get him, that'd be good. So it started off with MGTOW, as I said, and it has now transmuted into this manosphere or manosphere. So within that manosphere is extreme misogyny. And within that misogynistic space, there's an icon within that space, a name you know, Andrew Tate. So he's within that space, but he's not the extreme of that space, but that extreme goes to the furthest. So let's just be acquainted with some of the terms again. So some of the terms, you have the, and stay with me, by the way, because this is a conversation that is going on globally, and it's something that we necessarily must enter into. So within that sphere, you have the broader male supremacist. So that male supremacist, of course, you don't really need me to define what a male supremacist would be. This is a man who feels that he should lord it over everybody, especially the women. So that's a male supremacist. And then within that, the lower rung of that male supremacist, you have the men's rights activism. So MRAs, they call them. So there's the men's rights activism. So within that space, you have a wider conversation that speaks to traditional male virtues and traditional male roles. Some of the things actually that you've heard Stu Niger mention here and there. Let me bring Solly on, see if Solly understands that space. Solly, are you there? Solly. My goodness, this is what he does, man. He will come in and we won't. Let me remove Solly. He's clearly not here. So yeah, I lost my chain of thought. So yes, so within that MRA, men's right activism, you have a person like Andrew Tate who leads that conversation, but is not an extreme misogynist. So do you see? And then within the further rung still of that, you have incels, the people, some people that they call incels. So those incels, they are essentially men that have chosen to go celibate. So disenfranchised are they with the way that the male role is being defined. So you have that as well. So within all, so now let's now go back to now. Sorry. All right. So Solly, are you here, or Kosa? Are you here, Solly?
I'm here.
Yeah. So do you know the space?
Yes, I know the space.
Right.
There's a lot of yeah. There's a lot of misunderstanding and misinterpretation in that space, but yeah, I think I could be able to clear out some things. Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, my build-up. Did you know about the MGTOW movement?
Yeah, I saw all these things playing out from years ago till now.
Yeah, that was about 7-10 years ago, wasn't it? The MGTOW movement. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, we're saying.
No. If you know about that space, then so the MGTOW movement, MGTOW, men go their own way. So these were disenfranchised men. So men that are wrapped in that child support sort of narrative, and all of those disenfranchisement, that is the Western man's lot. So they've decided then to live outside of the system, especially away from women. So it was somewhat of an anti-woman, anti-women movement. MGTOW, men go their own way. So that started about 7-10 years ago. But that has now transmuted into the manosphere now. So the latest incarnation of MGTOW is the manosphere now. But within that manosphere space, there's a broader understanding of it. So within that manosphere space, you have people like Kevin Samuels, who I'm sure you know, and then people like Andrew Tate, who I'm sure you know. So those people now, they are speaking to traditional male values, defined clear male roles, and that is where the conversation is. But because they are now trying to reintroduce that traditional form of masculinity, they have been somewhat labeled misogynistic and all of that. So your understanding of that space, Solly.
Yeah, some years ago, because of social media, and you can direct it to the introduction of social media, things like Instagram, things like Tinder. It was easier before, if women wanted to be with men, they will usually go to the mall, you will meet them in person. It was usually men around their own area. So every area had like a certain a form of like man to woman. There was some kind of equality. Like you really have to be really bad at women for you to not even get a chance with them. But now, with the introduction of social media, a girl from Agege can be talking to a guy from like Washington DC within the blink of an eye. So, and when you are looking at biology, women go for the best men out there. The best men out there were the men around them. Now they have access to all the men in the world. And based on stats, they are going for the top 10%, top 20% of men in the world. And you can use, and that's why people flex. That's why people flex on social media. That's why, because they are trying to get the attention of women. Now, there were some men, I noticed it's usually men that don't grow up around women, or men that don't usually have sisters, or I hang out around a lot of women in their family or in their social life. They find it very hard to communicate with women. Maybe they are scared, maybe they are not trying to do something wrong, and it was getting harder and harder because the women will not want to associate with you because you are not the best. You are not even the best in the area. Now they know because they have social media. So these men started, and there were also laws that were not favoring them. For example, like divorce laws, where most of the time the woman gets the child, or she gets most of your property or whatever you've made, your money, and you now have to pay her probably for like 16 or 12 or 18 years for her to take care of the child. And sometimes the amount you're paying her didn't even make any sense because it was more than enough to take care of like multiple children, and they never really check if the women are using the money on the child. So a lot of men were just being exploited. It was like the way the things were set up in the West, they were trying to discourage people from having a family, building a home. And when you give people the ability to take advantage of another person and you are legally protecting them, they are going to take it to the fullest. So after a while, because of the internet, a group of guys started noticing a pattern, and they started saying men going their own way. So women will now take it the wrong way, that, oh, men are against them. In the definition of MGTOW, it literally says men going their own way. It's not men hating women. It's not men not liking women. It's not men turning homosexual. It's men just not wanting to deal with women. Because if you look at it, they have nothing to gain from being in a relationship with women. They have nothing to gain from marrying a woman. Most of the women in the West, they don't want to clean. They don't want to cook. They want to argue with you. They claim they want 50-50, but most of the time you're the one paying for everything. Most of them have children out of wedlock. So it was like, but that's what you get when you are living in a society where the cost of living is very high. You know, if it was in a society and they were making that same amount of money that they are making, but the cost of living wasn't so high, I'm sure they would be able to get women easily. But when you are living in a society where the women can work, cost of living is so high, women are not going to, they don't really want their equals. They want somebody better than them. And in those kind of societies, it's very, very hard to, go
Okay. So Solly, we are somewhat at a crossroad now, masculinity and the male person.
Yes.
Because the traditional male definitions that we know, you go the hunter-gatherer transmuted into the modern man. So you have clearly defined roles as a man traditionally. But those clearly defined masculine roles now are now somewhat being they've been dissipated, they've been watered down, and they seem no longer relevant for contemporary times and going forward. So men are somewhat at a crossroad now, trying to find definition, because often instances you find that the man is not the breadwinner in the house anymore. It doesn't have that traditional. They need the role to protect a female, especially in the Western Hemisphere, is not something that relies on you anymore, because the society protects a suitable cover of protection. So traditional male roles are being eroded, and sort of like masculinity at a crossroad.
Yes, this was the agenda when they created equality. They wanted all these roles being removed, but you can't remove things like biology. Women are still more attracted to men that are better than them. In general, I'm not saying all women, but in general, because when you look at the stats, who are most women matching with on dating applications and dating websites? Is the top 10%, top 20%. If they are saying they don't need men, they are all equal, so why are they going for the top 10 and top 20% in general? So majority are still going for what they like biologically. And if you look at most of the jobs, most women are not going for hard jobs like mining, going to the oil rigs.
They are now. I can tell you that. Go to Congo, or half the miners are women, and go to Norway. You see them on oil ships all over the place.
But in general, it's still more majority men. That's what I'm trying to say. If not, since there's equality and both men and women can do everything the same way, then it should be 50-50. But if you look at the statistics, in generality, it's still majority men dominating this space. So having the ability for equality just allow them to come into the job market, but they still don't want those type of jobs. So biology, you can fight with all these things, but you don't fight biology, basically. So when you it's all in it all came as an evolution, basically. So most of these men, I'm sure as a Nigerian.
Okay, let's go to that. Let's stay in that space that you introduced, Solly, because we are bringing Kevin Samuels into the conversation now.
Yeah.
So that space that you've just spoken to there, that because the world has shrunk into a very tiny little global village. You are in Amsterdam, I'm talking to you. I'm in London. People are listening in Saudi Arabia, wherever. So it's a global village with a global reach. You see people traveling to marry all over So you are now saying that women have a wider space. Women have a wider space to reach too. Yes, and because of that buffet that we're saying is available, the man now is under pressure. So the traditional average man now, he doesn't get quite the expanse of women that he would normally get. But this is where Kevin Samuel comes in, because now everybody has access to the best that is available, and every woman from average to 10 out of 10, they are chasing that man. But then they chase that man up to the point that they hit that panic age for the female. And at that panic age, then they end up in spaces like this. So let me show you a clip of this. I played it just now. So this is now Kevin Samuels dealing with those women that have now reached that panic age.
Y'all are all out of whack with how men think. This is why you can't get what you want from us, because you're valuing something up here that is a used vehicle with a lot of miles. Okay. Just because you hand washed it. You were 20-year-old.
So there it is. That's Kevin Samuels. Good, Gideon, good to see you. So this conversation now, the man at a crossroad, is sort of it's called the manosphere now. That's the broad term. It's a bit more extreme, that term, but that's the loose term that we're using. But that space now that Kevin Samuels opened up, Solly, what's your understanding of that space?
So what Kevin Samuel was trying to do was trying to teach both men and women how to be able to get each other and what their problems were. He had a lot of men that he judged. He had a lot of men that he insulted, but most of the videos that were going viral was when he challenged women. So some women, there were a lot of delusional men, but they don't get as much views. But the women were more argumentative on reality. Because, for example, most women believe that if a man sleeps with them, then that means the man is in love with them, and that means the man wants to marry them. Because for women to sleep with you, they have to see you as someone. In general, I'm not saying in totality, in general, when most women sleep with you, they have to see you as someone that they can be in a relationship with. So most women, and that comes with another problem. A lot of women do not grow up with around with men. They didn't grow up probably with a father. They didn't grow up with a brother. So they have no idea what men talk about. Like, they have no idea how men think, how men behave. So most men think women think like them, and most women think most men think like them. Now, these women, because they have access to the internet and they can go be with a basketballer, like if a basketballer can message them and have them in another city in just next day or a few days, even get them on a private jet. So in their mind, they believe that that's where their standard is. Meanwhile, as a man, we all know that the guy just wants to hook up with her and probably never see her again. But in the woman's mind, she's thinking that, oh, the guy must be in love with her for him to message her, for him to do all this for her, for him to even sleep with her, you know. So she now sets a standard on that basis, that she's not dating anybody lower than that, because that's her standard. That's our minimum standard. So if any of these other guys are trying, somebody that works in a market, so even if somebody is rich, right, but he probably works a white collar job, she will see him as lower than her because he doesn't have all that clout, that attention, that social approval from people. He doesn't, you know, which I believe for most women is number one: social approval, then money, then and then looks. You know, so she'll always compare, and no matter what you bring
all right,
her,
so
you are not the best.
Yeah.
So they always go out their life. They will not get married because they don't want to go below, in their own minds, their own standards. So they're 30, 40, 50. They are still chasing, you know, the fun that they had, thinking that's their standards. That's why they're always growing old and they don't have any stable relationship or any husband at that age.
All right, thank you, Solly. Solly, let me introduce you to Kazorian. So Kazorian is one of the leading voices in this space that we are talking to. So I invited him to really introduce this conversation to this platform. He runs one of the most insightful platforms around this sort of subject matter. You have to forgive him for being Kenyan, but not everybody can be a Yoruba man like us. But Kaizo, good to meet you. Good to see you again, I should say. I mentioned earlier, but good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. So with this whole topic, let me just bring in from a certain baseline, and then we'll go on from there.
Actually, sorry, Kaizo. Let me. I'm not sure if you started with us, but let me give you the preamble that I used to build it up, and then you pick it up from there to let me know if I'm headed in the right direction, and then you guide us out, because this is really your conversational space. But when I started off, I said the manosphere. It started off as MGTOW, which was a men go their own way, which was a movement going back to about 10, 15 years. It dates back further than that, but it had this reincarnation about 10 to 15 years ago. So that was MGTOW, men go their own way. And then that transmuted into the manosphere, which is some sort of misogynistic extreme of our masculinity. But then within that manosphere, you have watered down versions of it, where people like Andrew Tate, they come in to reclaim and redefine and reintroduce rather traditional male roles to the Gen Z and the current generation, who have completely been watered down by this now au fait woke culture that we're living in now. So it transmitted into that. And then within that space, you also have people like Kevin Samuels, who is also trying to rebalance expectations from women, especially Black women, and also speaking to traditional male roles. So Kevin Samuels, now deceased, now that space opens up, but it's about to be filled now by what's she called again? Pearly
Just
King.
Pearly Things.
Just Pearly Things. So now about to be claimed by Just Pearly Things, and that was where we are. So pick it up from there, and erase out the mistakes. Kaisorian.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That is actually a very good summary. So shout out to my people over there. We got Laroye, and also we got Sarah Sori saying, "Hail Master Kaizo, shalom to you."
Are those your people?
Of course, they're my people, man.
They follow you everywhere. Carry on.
Right. So yes, 100%. So MGTOW, what, right? As you stated, that stands for men going their own way. Now, the reason why this whole MGTOW movement even started is because a lot of men in the West, specifically UK, America, and all the other sort of countries with a similar legal and political system, they noticed that when men would get into long-term relationships, sometimes they would end up having children and let's say assets such as houses or other forms of assets. So what would happen is a woman might reach a certain point. You're in love with her, everything is great. Then after maybe 5-10 years, something kind of like a demonic spell goes off in her mind, and it says, "I'm not happy." Right? That's the thing that the MGTOW started noticing. Oh, it doesn't matter how well you treat your woman, because we live now in a society where the woman is protected by the state, meaning if anything goes wrong, she is covered. Her payment. Also, you cover her expenses because you've been in a relationship with her. So half of your let's say assets go to her. So you notice it's no longer based on something that happened was called the no fault divorce, meaning a woman can divorce you legally without having to have a fault. Simply, "I'm not happy" is good enough to take half of your assets. Before, there had to be a fault. She had to catch you cheating. She'd have to hire expensive let's say investigative inspectors to catch you in the act somehow, right? And then build a case. But at this point, that was no longer necessary. So these MGTOW men realized they're being divorced, which actually emotionally set them up. The divorce rate for men increased to a point whereby it was too high. And also they realized that their assets was taken away. So a lot of these people, and I remember I was actually there in the beginning of this movement on YouTube, working with people like Tommy Sotomayor. There's also Old Man, aka Obsidian News Network, all these kinds of people. I was there from the original sort of conversation. So basically, MGTOW was a response to the legal system, which gave women more, I guess, prejudice against men when it came to that sort of relationship goal. And also, there was that element of when a woman wants to leave a man, it's, "Hey, sis, go find your best self. Go and find a man that loves you. Go find yourself." But if a man with children left the wife, you are a deadbeat. So there was that sort of kind of dualistic, asymmetrical sort of sphere. Women are praised for leaving a relationship because they're finding the true selves. Men obviously are vilified because they're leaving their responsibility. So that's the MGTOW. Now that we leave the MGTOW, we start now having other groups of men, right? We call them incels, or you can just call it the dating market, right? What happened is this, right? Before, a man could go find a woman. He could just have to be normal looking, has a job. But obviously with capitalism, where now women are part of the sort of the money-making sort of regime, the bar of entry for a relationship became higher. So a lot of men were finding themselves not able to get a woman even to date them. So this whole pickup artistry also kind of bloomed. A lot of people like Angry Man. There's also a lot of them all over this space. These were pickup artists, right? Teaching men how to find women over there in the spaces. And one of the issue, there was two types of pickup artistry. There was the simping, then also there was the pump and dump. So because now you merge MGTOW.
So who's this? Who's the simpy? Are those the ones always throwing money at webcam girls and what was that thing? Fans, only fans, and
Only
is that
fans.
is that the simpy? The ones always throwing money at girls who skimpily dressed.
Right. Okay. Well, actually, I would say the OnlyFans, the ones throwing money at OnlyFans are not really that much simps because they know what they want. The simps are the ones throwing money at women in the manosphere. There's a woman actually who's from the UK. Her name is Jessica X. I debated her as well.
No, I know her. I know she's quite sharp.
She is sharp.
Hopefully, when I bring this conversation on, I'll hustle hard to bring her on as well.
Right. She is a sharp woman. But if you notice, she was able to set up her profile, and this is the same. She is a reason why even Just Bully Things became as big as she did. Men in general are simps to women. You see a beautiful woman, you feel like you need to help her out, or that's the simp logic over there, right? My friend Ike, we have a business together and everything. A lot of people might think he's a simp because he used to donate to women. Now I would say he's not a simp because he donates to everybody. But a simp is that person that looks at women as if they're special creatures to God. So simping, in my definition, is people who put women in a pedestal. Well, otherwise they wouldn't put their fellow man in a pedestal. That's simping to me.
Would you concede that there's a sharp erosion of the traditional male roles as we knew it? Well, you are only in your 20s, but I'm sure memories to 50, 70, 80 years ago. So those traditional male roles, which were clearly defined roles, they completely almost don't exist anymore now. And I was just in the conversation with Solly that men are at a crossroad now because the protector man, his role is not necessary anymore because the society, especially in the West, they provide enough protection for everybody, especially the women. So she's protected. So the bread provider, the hunter-gatherer man, he no longer necessarily that role because in often instances, the female in the relationship is probably earning more than the man. So it doesn't really need him for that as well. So the role of a man is just essentially now being boiled down to just solely for procreation. And because of that confused role now, that now lack of definition of what constitutes a man, and that's now the role that people like Andrew Tate and somewhat a little bit like Kevin Samuels are trying to fill, Kaizo.
Yeah, actually a great point. So now, actually, this is a very nuanced point you brought up. Because you are right? The roles that were easily or rather clearly defined by our previous historical points were there. However, this is now the issue with society. Society has not evolved. After the war, the Second World War, women actually began taking the positions that men had previously occupied because now men had to go to war. So, for example, women were now working in the industries, working in the soaping companies, working as teachers, as lawyers, as doctors. So women began, in huge numbers working in areas that were traditionally male. So what happened is after the war, this sector actually opened up. The capitalists realized having two people working in these sectors is actually more beneficial for them. Why? Because now you have twice as many people working, right? And also they could obviously reduce the pay by also half of the amount. That meant it's better for the economists and the capitalists. So realistically speaking, we can't go backwards. And the reason we can't go backwards, especially in the West, is that the pay is not high enough for a single man to actually earn enough money to actually provide for his family. Now a woman has to work. So when now a woman has to work and you have to work, there's no longer necessary for a woman to respect you because you're no longer providing something that across all of human society, or rather human civilization, that you've always provided for. In the past, think about the Serengeti in East Africa, or even let's say the Niger bush. What would happen is a woman will tell you, hey, I'm pregnant. I can't fend for myself. Please, can you protect me? Okay, you build her a house, a cave, whatever it is. I'm hungry. You go out there, hunt, bring the meat to her. So you are basically the person that would be able to provide for and protect her. But right now, you need her to provide partially for your household, so the respect element from the woman has reduced. So in this reality is this: we can't go backwards, and right now, if you move forward, we kind of moving forward in this very broken relationship sort of status. So as human beings, we need to now find a new norm, and this is actually why I became a passport bro, and I went to Africa, whereby I could turn the times against the Western circumstances, so that I can find a woman where I still have that sort of level of provision.
There used to be a term for us, what you are now calling passport bro. Do you know what that term is?
Nomad, or rather,
no, sex parts.
Sex parts.
Yes. What's this now news? You are using your passport to go and intimidate women in the third world and take advantage of them. So that's what a passport bro is, isn't it? And by the way, Kaizo has a platform, so the link is in the comment section. Go follow him. It's a lot more engaging than it's as engaging as he is here there. But carry on, passport bro.
This guy. Okay, so I'm being trolled. No, I'm not. I wouldn't. Well, okay, yeah. So yes, so that's the element. So let me explain that whole passport bro situation. You got two options in the West. Either you are going to try to be a millionaire type, the 5%, or you're going to actually just understand that your woman will never respect you, because ultimately this is hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary mechanisms that has put a woman's mindset to think a certain way. For example, let me give an example as an African man who came to the West, UK or America, with his wife, who they had actually gone through hard times with, most likely will not end up in divorce. Why? Because they both came from that same cultural motif. But if now an African man goes to Africa, let's say a Nigerian goes back to Ghana or goes to Nigeria, gets married, after 5 years, the woman would understand the system, the rules, and the laws, and will most likely leave him. We know so many stories like this, right? There's one story I know from my own friend. He went back to Nigeria, found a woman from a random dusty village, and took her back to the UK, educated her. She even went to university. One day, she came back with a Jamaican man and said, "This is my new boyfriend," to her husband.
Winston came back with Winston.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So we know these things happen. So the only way not the only way, a reasonable way that you can do this is you stay in Africa with the woman. You don't bring her back because she will be corrupted. And if you cannot if you can't compete in the West, you need to find yourself alternative solutions. There's no point, because reality is this: the capitalists ruined the system. The government now became the man of the woman. For example, let's say because brother, you mentioned, so we've already gone from the MGTOW. We've talked about incels a little bit, involuntary celibates. We've talked about also of the modern relationships in the West. Now there's also obviously another thing which is called the men's rights movement, or the MRA. Active or male rights activists, right? What this means is this, right? There's certain laws that are against you by nature of you just simply existing in these Western countries. A simple example is the rights for you when you are you get a woman pregnant. If you get a woman pregnant in the UK, for example, that's the country I'm well versed in. Simple. The woman has all the rights for the abortion, if that's the state that she wants to take. She has all the rights to keep the child, if that's what she wants. She can even force you to pay child support if she chooses to keep the baby. She can choose to not allow you to see the baby for other reasons, and the court most likely will take her side. The point is, you as a man have almost zero sort of protection laws against you. She can even lie to you, get herself pregnant. She can steal your condom. My point is, the woman has all the power when it comes to reproductive rights. So as a man in these sort of countries, you don't have that much opportunity to control your own fate. The government prioritizes children number one, then the woman, then the man. So that's how the laws are structured. So if you don't feel that this is a laws that you want to be part of, well, you can be like me. Just make sure you don't do stupid things, right? You play a stupid game, you win a stupid prize. That's the logic that I always use. But ultimately, I did decide that the West was not a good country for me mentally. I used to be a lecturer in a London university. I decided to leave that job.
And by the way, for the benefit of our background information, Kaizo is it would deny it, but by his voice you already know is a British man of Kenyan descent. Got his PhD actually before 25, so is well versed and well read, but maybe doesn't know as much as he imagines he does. But sorry, carry on, Kaizo. Yeah.
Well, right. Okay, yeah. So I got my PhD. Before I was 25, I got it in material science and physics and nanotechnology. I was focusing on renewable energy, and after my PhD, I did work as a lecturer/researcher in a London university, and for around 9 months, I did quit my job, and I went back to Kenya. I was gonna go to Ethiopia actually, right? As a passport bro, why? I'd rather go to the best country. Why? Ethiopian women are similar to Nigerian women, but they're better looking. So the reason I say they're similar to Nigerian
women,
I
consider I've considered that before. That right. the Ethiopians, they are the best looking Africans. Followed by the Ethiopians mainly. Yeah, but the biggest are the Kenyans. But carry on.
Yeah, exactly right. But the main the main reason I did choose Ethiopia is because morally speaking, so for me, my background is sometimes I'm a part-time Christian, part-time Muslim. So so I'd rather have someone that comes from that sort of background, because you see, with religion controls women. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm just saying it benefits me. So if you go around to a country where a woman's not going to cheat on you easily because she feels she's going to go to hell. So I'd rather go to a culture that is already instantiated within their sort of the beginning of that sort of culture. Now, Nigeria is also great. Women in Nigeria have the least divorce rate in Africa. 0.5% divorce rate is crazy. So I didn't have any cultural sort of similarities with Nigeria, so I decided to go to Ethiopia, since it's the country right next to Kenya. However, Ethiopia doesn't have as much of a developed economy, meaning the internet is slow. And since I wanted to make money on YouTube to sustain my lifestyle, I had to go to a country that was a little bit more developed, aka Kenya. And that's how it is right now. So I make some money from YouTube, and also I make some money from other companies. I do actually own an engineering company with someone I met on YouTube. So, this whole sort of Black Manosphere, I was able to actually sort of navigate the space, meet people that were actually, my partner is Nigerian. His name is Ike Ogiamien. So we do actually run several companies together. One of them is engineering. We provide services. For example, let's say if you want to become a passport bro, or you want to become a digital nomad, we actually help you find employment, or rather we also help you find employees in Africa, because now you can leverage the dollar, right? So for example, if you look at Ethiopia, all my employees and our employees are Ethiopian. Why? Because Ethiopia, a senior engineer is being paid, say $250 a month. We pay them $1,000 a month. You see, what that means is we choose the best of the best engineers in Ethiopia. We overpay them, and yet we underpay them based on the American amount. We'd have to pay an American $6,000 to get the same quality. So
essentially you get the commission from America, UK, wherever, and then you invoice them $10,000 for the engineer, and then you pay him $1,000. You are happy. He is happy, but you are happier, sort of a thing.
Exactly. Perfect. Obviously you're a very intelligent man. You already saw the whole process. So This is how I survived, and this is how I was able to leave my job and still be able to sort of make money while in Africa. So, but I will say this: in Africa, you still have that sort of relationship status that we were all sort of we grew up with. Because obviously, I'm a millennial. As you said, I'm in my late 20s. So we kind of had this, my mother was a very strong Christian. She raised me in a certain way, expectations of a relationship. Then when I was doing this whole relationshiping in the UK, I realized this is not what I was brought up with. So the culture had changed drastically to a point whereby I could not believe in the cultural standards. Now, the next point here is I was actually, in the manosphere, it has split off into 3 different sectors. There is the intellectual manosphere, which is what I'm more part of. Then there's also the We Don't Like Keisha manosphere. I can tell you some of the people there. There's people like Bernard Riley. It's a big show. He does host a morning show every day. Over there, I've debated these people, and I've told them, hey guys, if you want to help men, you do have to speak more about manly stuff and not only complain about women. But of course, you can't save everybody.
All right. I think Kaiser was interrupted somewhat, but to that understanding, let's bring you back in, Solly. So what Kaiser was talking us through is the evolution, and he's a perfect example, by the way, and you as well. You're around about the same age, but you're probably slightly younger than him. What he's now talking about is the position of the modern man, which is represented by both of you and a lot of people listening. The position of the modern man. So here you have Kaizo, who are British trained. If he had stayed in the UK, he would have lived at least an upper middle class, at the very base minimum, a middle class life, just based on what he has made of himself. But then that conflation of masculinity has led to the point that he has felt the need to relocate back to his ancestral home in order for his masculinity to have currency. Do you identify with what Kaizo said, Solly?
It's understandable, but what most of these people like Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate advocate for is that instead of, because everybody cannot travel to Colombia or Ethiopia just to find a feminine woman. You have to be forced to work with what you have and the society you are living in. Yes.
But a lot of men are not. They are not. Have you heard of the passport bro movement? Which have you heard of that?
Yes. White people have been doing the passport bro things years ago before black people found about.
Yes. So then you are not forced to live with what you have anymore, because people are now discovering the power of both their currency. I'm talking about Western people, Europeans and Americans, mainly Canadians, Australians. They are now finding about the power and potency of both their currency and their passport. And they are now going to Latin America, Asian countries, where they're treated like gods and the women are more traditional.
Yes, but it's not all of them. Most of these women are trying to take advantage of these men, because these men, their problem is not really not all of them. Some of them, their problem is not with the society and how it's structured. Their problem is their approach with women. They don't know how to talk to women. They don't know how to approach with women. They don't have the power of the tongue. They don't know how to talk to women. You know, women.
Hang on,
can
I correct a couple of things there, brother, just before we go on? Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the incels, right? We call them involuntary celibate. They're separate from actually what we are, which is more MGTOW, Manosphere. So the difference is, right, for the rest of us, we're disliking the fact that these women have been corrupted by the system and the power. If you have children with them, for example, they'll get taken away. And I have a direct experience from people I lived with, like another professor that I used to live with. His wife took his kids away. In fact, his wife was an African lady that he even paid money to bring to UK. Took the kids away, both of them, and then he was left homeless. The system, he was being abused actually by her. I witnessed some of the abuse, and he was basically lost his kids. The police came and arrested him. So there's two sectors. So we have to separate between the incels, which are more of the losers, as you're talking about, who don't have that, let's say, cognitive acuity to be able to sort of express themselves to a woman and attract her, versus the rest of the manosphere, which is more looking for a successful long-term relationship with someone that you can now build. So I think, you are directly referring to more of the incel types in that statement. Go ahead, brother.
And being in the West is more about your goals. If you are the type of person who comes with the mindset of, I want to get married, which usually comes from, like, most of us that come from a third world country, we're coming into the West, we are marriage minded. Most of this new generation are not marriage minded. They are coming into the generation of social media. So that's why you see it's not going to change. It's just going to keep on getting worse, because they don't know about all this family structure. They don't know about all this being marriage-minded. Like you said, the divorce rate in Nigeria is low because we grew up in a society that was marriage-minded. They are growing up in a society that it benefits the women more to divorce the men. It benefits, it's portrayed that it benefits the women to be independent. So this is what they are going for. Now, if you're someone who doesn't care about marriage, being in the West is the best thing for you. All you have to do is just work hard on yourself, and the women will come to you.
Let me interject there, Solly. You're talking about women who doesn't care about marriage because of the abundance of what is available, both in just all of the options available.
No, it's not that they don't care. They might care, but they don't take it serious. It's just like eating bread to them. They just want to get married, but they don't want to be a wife.
Yeah, what I'm leading to is that a lot of these women, they fall within that cusp of between 23 to round about 35. And it's not a new space, by the way. Women who come into that phase, they've got the education, they're very, very, very sharp, they're respected within their field, all of this. And a lot of them even talk about having that if they want to procreate, they'll just go and get a donor. They talk about all of that. But I'm telling you for certainty, because it has repeated with every single generation, that mindset. When they hit the age of 35, they end up on spaces like Kevin Samuels talking about how life has done them bad. It's a phase. It's not a new thinking. It's a phase.
Yes, and it's not going to play out well for them in the long run, because most of the time, all they do is make money for themselves, right? And later on in time, they have this maternal need. Some of them feed it with buying pets like cats. Some of them feed it with buying pets like dogs. But they don't know, but subconsciously they are feeding into their maternal needs. And they are going to want children. And by the time they reach 30, 35, it becomes very risky. Even if they have a sperm donor, some of them may not be able to have children again. Some of them may not be able to have healthy children again at that age. So they start seeing all the risk. They don't care about the risk while they're young, because the world is at their footstep and the world is at their doorstep. Who on earth, very, very few people on earth will be thinking about consequences if they are at the top most of their life. So that's why when they get to 35, but by then it's kind of too late, because they've already set their standard. The type of men they want, 18-year-old girls, 20-year-old women, very young women want them also. And these men are going to surely choose to marry the younger women over the older women. But most of these women still don't know. Even when they are 35, even when they are 40, in their mind, they are saying, oh, I have more experience with life. I know how to do more sex positions, so I'm better, because that's what they value in men. So they now think, oh, men will value it in them. So that's another reason why they keep on being hard-headed, because they feel like since they like more experience in men too would like more experience in women. So in their mind, they are getting more experience by sleeping with more people. Since they have more experience working hard, getting money, and all these things, since they want a guy who is stronger than them, has more money than them, they think that, oh, a man wants an independent woman who can make her money. But most of these women don't share their money.
Yeah, but it's a real misnomer for women to think that men want an independent woman. I don't know of a man that wants maybe I'm too old school, but I don't know of a man that wants an independent woman. I think men want women that are demure and feminine. I'm not saying universally, but largely, men want women that are demure and feminine. So all these sharp-heeled, spiked-tongued, I've got 10 masters. Nobody wants that, surely.
Yes, but that's the only. Well, okay, now we are sitting around each other, we are talking to ourselves, and we are saying this, right? But if for most men, if a woman who is very beautiful, right, says, "Oh, I have my own business, I have my own 10 degrees," most men are looking at this woman like, this woman looks like Kim Kardashian. Am I going to tell her I don't care about her degrees? Am I going to tell her that I don't care that she has a business? Of course, I'll tell her that, oh man, I love that you have a business. Oh man, like you are making me love you more, that you are an independent. Most men will just lie to these women because they want to be with her. Men don't, these simps will tell this woman anything. just to be with her, even if it's just for one, even if it's not to be with her for one night, even just for the fact that they are chatting with her. They will tell her that they love everything that she does. They love her, that she's independent, so it's turning them on. They just lie just to get what they want. And this is what these women are hearing morning, afternoon, evening. So if another man comes and tells her that, no, men are not attracted, the woman will never believe you. Because 9 out of 10 times, men are telling her that, oh, I love that you are independent. That one man that is going to tell her the truth, she's most likely not going, especially if he's a man she's not attracted to, she will never listen to him. Unless it's a man that she's attracted to, and him telling her the truth might even make him unattractive to her. So most of these women grow up all their lives hearing lies from when they are 17, 18, 19, 20. Men are just lying to them that I want an independent woman, I want a strong woman, I want a woman that makes just so that
what do you think men want, especially men your generation, mid to late 20s thereabout? What of course you are not speaking for the universality, but you are speaking from that space. What do you think men of millennial men, what do you want in terms of what do you want really? Let's make it ambiguous.
Most men don't even have the ability to even have a choice on what they want. My generation, they don't. You just get what you take. But if you could choose, or if I could choose, I just want someone that will cooperate with me and not disrespect me and not cheat. I'm not asking for too much. I'm not asking for too much.
Yeah, but that is traditionally what men have always wanted. So it's no different. Yes. That you just want a peaceful life. That you just want a bit of silence so you can watch football.
But what most women are watching on social media, what is glorified on social media is a boss chick with probably a street dude that has a lot of money, which I don't know how many street men have a lot of money. Somebody who has plenty time to be with her, but also has plenty money. I don't know anybody that has plenty money, has plenty time on his hands. Unless he's a very old sugar daddy, or unless he's doing something illegal. So they are, what they see on social media is not real. Social media is mostly not real, and they are going for what they see in movies, which even makes it worse. They'll say, but in this movie, but in this series, these are what they quote when they are talking about what they want. They never talk about reality, because nobody really shows them reality. They go on YouTube, they are not seeing reality in terms of relationship. They watch movies, they are not seeing real relationship. They watch series, they go on Instagram, they go on Tumblr, Twitter, everything is just delusion and illusion and made up things, not reality. But that's all they see. They don't grow up in a family where they have both the mother and the father, so they don't have
any. Sorry, to just that space, and then I want to bring other voices into the conversation. To that space, because statistics gives us an insight, but to that space that we were talking about, they didn't grow up with a father and a mother. So how much, and of course, not how much, but in what manner do you think single parenthood shapes the future of the child? Using the female child, using a Black female single parent as an example.
Okay, for example, now, I didn't see my mother bringing multiple men home. So if I saw something like that outside, that would be weird to me. If they grew up in a home where it's just a single mother, the woman is bringing different men home all the time. That becomes normal to them. That's just an example. For example, now, there are some things that I did when I was young. I wouldn't listen to my mother. If like, let the mother beat you 100 times, 200 times, give you punishment. All the father needs to do is look at you once or give you one warning, and that child will understand and respect himself, because there's that authority figure. He's a man. There's just that biology there. But when you don't have a man in that household, who is going to tell the child what to do? If you bring a stepfather, all you say is, oh, you are not my daddy. So how are you going to tell me what to do? The stepfather cannot discipline the child. So it's just, and if you look at the statistics, if a child grows up in a single father home, it can still turn out right. If a child grows up in a household with a mother and a father, it's basically the same as a single father home. But when you grow up in a female household, especially because women react to things like problems and issues emotionally, most of these guys grow up very emotional. And if you look at the USA, for example, that's why most of these people, most of the black men in USA are emotional men. Somebody pissed them off, instead of taking it in or settling down, or somebody telling them farabale, just relax, explaining the nobody's there to explain the situation. They just take their anger mixed with emotions, and they just take a gun and go and by the person. So that's an example. Majority of the black men in USA grew up in a single mother household, or they grew up with their grandmother. They didn't grow up in a household where there was a father figure, because another emotional man had taken out their father, or their father had gone to jail for doing something emotional, because their father also grew up in a single mother household. So you have a lot of I've lived with women. They can be very emotional. They can also make you emotional just by being around them because they react to everything emotionally. Now imagine a child that is always angry, poor, all that mixed emotion and all that mixed toxicity. You now put a flame of emotion on it as a reaction all the time. All the time, they will just be getting more violent and more violent with no checkup. Always playing the victim, always having an excuse for, because they start getting feminine traits, always having an excuse for every problem, never taking any accountability. All those kind of things, they inherit it, and it's very bad on the child. Now, if girls grow up in a household that has single mother, they see the mother bringing in different types of men all the time. The mother always trying to, take advantage of the men she's bringing home. To the female child, that is normal. That is all she has known, and that is what she's going to grow up to do, and she's going to do it even more times than what she saw her mother do, because she will see all the mistakes her mother made, and she'll be like, hey, I ain't gonna make the same mistakes my mama made. I'm gonna be independent. I don't need no man. Woman, do you know how many times, even from white women, I've heard, I don't need no man. I'm like, what is this? I don't play those games. I'm a very traditional man. I don't play those games. But a lot of men will accept all those things. Say, yeah, girl, you're independent. I like that about you. You're a boss chick. I like that about you. We can both be bosses. All those kind of lies. All those kind of, just to. And women may like it at first, but in the long run, it doesn't last, because that's not what they are attracted to in the end.
All right.
You can't deny biology.
All right, Solly, let's bring Gideon into the conversation, get a female perspective if she's ready to go. Gideon, are you there? Gideon, Dave? This is Gideon, which comes here to sleep. Gideon. All right, let's bring me ASP in. So me ASP, we're talking about traditional male roles and the evolution of it, because the man, as we knew, is not the man as it is now. And there's a lot of confusion within that space. And people are now looking for the redefinition or the reacquaintance with the definition of what masculinity means. So the one thing that we know, ASP, the one thing that we know is that man as it is today cannot be man as it was in years gone by, because the landscape is no longer there to facilitate for how men were. But how can the traditional values of men, as has traditionally been known, be transmuted into contemporaneous time to still have relevance, to still have relevance, so that a man knows that he is still a man, but then of course is relevant to the times that we live in now. So this is where the confusion is for the male person, and this is that Andrew Tate, as Kevin Samuel space, me ASAP.
Well, thank you very much. One man, it's nice to see you again. And this is a very interesting topic you have brought out. I was quite surprised. It's a shift from the.
Yeah, no, we want to start to expand beyond Nigerian politics. The election has come and gone. A winner has emerged, so we can just move on from politics to So carry on.
And I want to commend it, because it's a much needed, a space, or rather topic, that we need to discuss, because the family unit actually translates into the society. So it's very important. And so to your question, what I can say about the male role, especially in this time and age, is that everything boils down back to the system. If you, I mean, that's within the Western context. So if we look at how things have played out in the West, prior to the civil rights movements, and before we had, when we still had things like Jim Crow in the United States, and we still had, ex-ante British laws and everything. By the way, feminism actually started from the UK itself, as Britain itself, and
a lot of people would dispute that. Queen Amina of Zaria, she predated the suffragette movement. She predated the suffragette movement.
So what I'm referring to is the classic modern feminism.
Yeah, go on.
So and that's the first wave feminism, which actually one would argue that it has a lot of multi dimensions to it, and so I can agree with you. And but so if I would talk from the point of view of the West, since we live in the West, so the male role has actually been, and I agree with a lot of speakers, the speakers that have spoken ahead, before me, that the male role has actually been, what men might say or perceive as being under threat, and all of this, like Solly said earlier, all of this stemmed especially from the no-fault divorce, and the aftermath of all those political, or rather government policies, is what has played out into the family role, and how we have seen the men actually, in a way, they've moved out of the home. We now have cases, lots of cases. It's now even the norm that the man of the house is absent in the home, and the other way around is actually the abnormality. And what I can just say, to your specific question of how men can adjust, how they can, in this particular day and age, and how they can, move with the times, would be that, first of all, they have to understand where they are. For example, if you are in Nigeria, these things might not make, relevance to you. I speak with some people, I interact with some Nigerians on Facebook, maybe back home, and I see they don't even sometimes understand the things. They don't have this, full consciousness of what really goes on when they hear cases like, for example, the high-profile cases, high-profile divorce cases, like what's this guy's name? Kim Kardashian's former husband, ex-husband. What's his name? Kanye West. Yeah. When they hear things like that, they try to appropriate those things with the mindset of of what is obtainable in Nigeria. Meanwhile, it's not the case. So to them, it's not really. But once you find yourself in the West, maybe Europe, the UK, Canada, and the US, you'd have to, first of all, understand the system. That's number one. Number two, you need to also understand, find resources that might help. Resources are one of the things you are providing now. Men's spaces, like the Manosphere. You've done deep dive into the history of the Manosphere, beginning from the MGTOW movement, men going their own way. I would like to also, point out, and just for a side note, also mention some of the other offshoots of the MGTOW. So we also have things like IGMOR, that's introspectoral black men of reform. And those
who are they? What are they?
Okay, so yeah, the MGTOW actually sprung from the white male, who felt that the system, it was no longer working in their favor, and that's actually, is a response from things like what we call the second wave feminism. And second wave feminism came with this, what some will perceive. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, because about just this week, there was a public. Sorry, I'm going to digress a bit. just this week, there was a publication, I think in New York Post, it's also on Fox News, you can confirm this, that the authorities are actually already beginning to, focus some attention on these spaces. I'm trying to not mention their names, but
no, mention their names if it's not anything. But this new wave feminism, just for the benefit of the conversation, give us a very, 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 very brief intro to it.
Okay, so the name I wanted to mention was the main top police. That's the FBI. So the FBI has already begun to document some of the activities, what they find, and they've labeled it in the publication. They've labeled it misogynistic. So which has meant that they are actually watching these spaces and seeing how these spaces also translate into the society. So in terms of second wave feminism, I would say that second wave feminism started with the likes of them Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks she's an African American, and she's still alive. She did a lot of extensive work in this regard. However, there's someone else who just recently, I think she recently passed. Her name has actually slipped my mind. Once I remember, I would let you know, because she's important for you also to understand where feminism actually has its roots. And she did a lot of extensive work. In fact, she worked with the FBI. According to some people, they believe that she had she had a lot of dealings with the authorities in making inroads into what we call the Playboy movement. When we had the Playboy magazine of those days, and she was instrumental to bringing down of the Playboy magazine and the Playboy owners of the Playboy at that time. And so she was one of the pioneers. She's a journalist. I don't know, her name is but I will remember, and I would let you know. She was one of the pioneers of that movement. And but along the line, those of the, they came up
is that movement essentially about the body harvesting, sort of the over exploitation of feminism by masculinity for commercial
exactly.
Just the street girls, the page 3 the top shelf magazines, etc. So
okay, I've remembered her name now, sir. Her name is Gloria Steinem. She is the Ogontari of the second wave or first wave, whatever you call it, second wave feminism. Again, her name is Gloria Steinem. If we have time, we can just go through and read up on her. She was one of the very first founders that kickstarted that movement. And like you said, you rightly noted that she brought in through her, they were able to bring in ideas from the academic world, from her own profession, being a journalist, that actually shaped the way the society became, and which men like the MGTOW ended up perceiving as exploitative because of the way those things played out. For example, we have okay, let me quickly cite a typical example of one of her her contributions, which we have felt in a deep manner. If I don't know if you heard about the story of Jonathan Majors that happened just some days ago. He's an A-list actor. He's a friend to Michael B. Jordan, the A-list actor in Wakanda. He was some weeks ago in New York. He was at a bar with his girlfriend. She's white, and at around 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning, they left the bar, and he got a Uber, and they were in the going home, and he was busy on his phone. He was texting. He was trying to communicate, and she was beside him, and she was like suspicious. What is he doing with that phone? And she was trying to snoop around and he was also dodging with the phone and the rest. Anyway, to cut the long story short, there was a back and forth, and then there was a tussle, and at the end of the day, there was there was hands were being laid on each other, and the driver was also a witness. So in the following morning, Jonathan Majors, being wanted to kind of like extol himself from the incident. It made a preemptive move of calling the cops. This was just first week in April. And so he called the cops around 11 a.m. in the morning. And when the cops came around, the cops asked him what happened. He told the side of the story. The cops decided that they wanted to talk to, his girlfriend. Now, by the time the cops spoke with his girlfriend, guess what, sir? The cops placed handcuff on Jonathan Majors, and they whisked him away, and he spent that day in jail. And his lawyers came out the next day and started explaining. But before then, the military, who he has already done some TV adverts with, TV deals with, they pulled off all the TV adverts. Endorsement deals, people started reacting, started pulling off, and basically this guy was already being cancelled. And the Black Manosphere, they already started going around and saying this is one of the things we've been discussing, and they were already rallying around and feeling pity, and they're making a lot of TV shows, or rather YouTube about that case. So now the question is this: why is it that when this guy called for the cops, when the cops came and they heard the side of the story, when they asked to hear the side of the story of the other lady, the next response was to place a handcuff on him and whisk him away?
But it wasn't a black thing, though. It's a feminism thing. I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a black. Yes, if it were a white man, it's the same thing we play out.
Yeah.
Now, the reason is because there's what we call the Duluth model. The Duluth model. And this Duluth model actually stays and tells the police how to act in instances of where we have interpersonal violence, IPV, where we have interpersonal violence between women. So it is by default. The cops actually have no choice, based on that Duluth model, that when they get into a scene where there's a fracas between husband and wife, or even girlfriend and boyfriend, the first culprit will be the male. And these were some of the things that the second wave feminism actually pushed, and has been there in the system. That is why I began by saying, if you look at everything, if you want to look, and try to pinpoint what is the major cause. You can blame women all you want, but like Solly actually noted, even if you blame women, you can't blame them. You can only blame them so much. Even if a man were in a situation that found that was to his advantage, a man will take advantage of that. So it is the way the system has been designed that has actually made people exploit those loopholes in the system. What's his name? Is it your guest mentioned some things. I don't know.
Kaizo. You see, this conversation actually is inspired by Kaizo, because I spend time on his space sometimes, and this is all they ever talk about. So I just thought maybe it's a conversational space that
I will just make sure. I'll just mention one more thing, so I can hear your response, and then maybe if you have other questions for me. But other things I wanted to say, but I will mention one more thing apart from the three things I've mentioned, to two things I've mentioned earlier, that men can take advantage of, to adjust to this new paradigm, especially within the Western lived experience. If a man decides, like Solly was mentioning, okay, if you are the type that is traditional, you've come from Nigeria, you've come from Ghana, you've come from Kenya, and you found yourself in Canada, in all these places, and you are the married oriented kind of person because of the way you were raised, I would advise that such men, in embarking on such a kind of what I would describe as a risky endeavor, would be to take advantage of things that can protect your rights as a man, protect your finances as a man, and in itself, counterintuitively, it will protect your marriage. Things like a prenuptial agreement. Those things will go a very long way. But men sometimes they're like, sometimes. Now here's another thing. When you are embarking, when you are even giving consideration to things like that, you will be surprised that it is even women that will try to talk you out of such a thing.
Go on, land that point, and then I want to bring Niger into the conversation, because this is something that he has been harping on for a very long time. But round off your point, and then I'll bring Niger in.
So that's what I would advise. So I would advise that before you don't let. I would not advise that you just one just how will I put it, will just walk in blindly into a decision as important as marriage, because basically in the West, marriage is not the way we think marriage is in Africa. It is basically a contractual agreement. And so you are entering into a contract is something you should go into, with all of your consciousness, and making a conscious decision that this is what you want to do at that stage of your life.
Oh, all right, brilliantly put. So I certainly learned about that. I've never heard of the new feminist movement before, but there it is, more research for us. But to Niger, I'm sure you know about all that. So you have always spoken about the traditional male roles. Anytime you have the space to speak. So so the traditional male role, this actually conversation inspired by Kaizo. A lot of the things that you guys talk about there, we thought we'll introduce it to this audience space. So what we're discussing is the evolution of the MGTOW movement that has now transmuted into now this convoluted and confused space for the millennial male, especially, and let's narrow it down to the black male. So to the millennial black male now, there's this there's a mixed signals being sent to him. Traditional backdrop as a black man with that black father, but contemporaneous times has watered down those traditional roles. So how does it go forward from what he has learned about masculinity and what society is requiring that masculinity should be? So this area being tackled by Kevin Samuels. Tunaja, your fault.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, one man, and greetings to everyone on the panel. Welcome,
your brother Kaizo is
here. Yeah. Welcome, Kaizo, to this space. And I can see that a lot of his minions are also around. The idea behind this is that I think
tonight you missed the all hail Kaizo. Please give me my.
No, I can see that. That's why I told him that I've never seen him on the Nigeria space before. He's going by Nigeria.
No, he comes here every now and then, but now
he does. I've never seen him.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, my apologies, Nigerian Prince, because I've never seen you. So I think this stuff started from sometime in the 70s, 60s, because there was a debate about population control in the world, and people were thinking that, if we got to a certain population, the whole world is going to die and all the rest of it. So the West started kind of introducing controls on childbearing and all that. Even the Chinese bought into it, and they did all those things. And it turns out that maybe it was a mistake, but they didn't want to back down, and it led to generations after generations the feminization, because this what they call it, feminist movement and all that is a part of misaligning the men and women in terms of the family structure. Because if the family structure is not there, population is not going to grow as quickly as they would like it to grow, as it will normally grow. And the role for men has never changed. The role of men is to provide, protect, and
you said it has never changed, but should it change now? Because you are talking about traditional roles, but we're talking about contemporaneous roles. Can you see that there's a chasm? Do you acknowledge the chasm first, that in contemporary times, those traditional roles, you're saying men should provide. Women are capable of providing. In certain families, the woman is the breadwinner. That happens so often, people don't even pay attention to it anymore. And the need to physically provide, to protect, is not really there anymore, especially in the Western space, where the security structures is such that everybody is under some form of protection or the other. So those traditional roles, are they still relevant for the here and now?
I think they are, depending on what the society wants. And if you decide that you want to, a kind of downgrade your population in terms of security readiness or combating threats, you can downgrade it to what it is now. And if you want to also have a situation whereby the population is not growing as quickly, you can downgrade it. It depends on what the society wants. And I can see that the West have the luxury. They do have that luxury compared to us. Just, I said it earlier on, just like when they talk about solar, climate change, solar energy and all the rest of it, they have the luxury to do that because they have already developed. If you go and copy them as like an African or Asian country that have not developed as fast, then it's up to you. You will fail while they are this is moving on. So I think the rules remain the same, and I think the reason why they kept it the way they have kept it this long is because of the fact that they felt they can get away with it. But if you look at it, there is a movement already against it. This is why you are seeing a lot of pushback, even on some of all these debates we're having. And you see people like Andrew Tate basically parenting boys now that are in single parent homes, or the father, because the father, they can't relate to their father anymore because their father is feminized. And you see that you see
if you say their father is feminized, can you describe how is their father feminized? Because that's a wide space that you just glossed over, and that is where the issue is.
Yeah, because what they see is that the men are no longer men, and you see that they see their men being kicked out of the house, and they become single parents, and they are not even single parents. They don't have they don't have anything. They just stay single, and the way they see the men being subservient and almost submissive in many cases, actually, to women, and the role of men has almost completely been washed out of the central narrative. Like in the movies and everything, it looks like women are the ones doing all the work. In reality, most of what this is
it not as a result of evolution, though, rather than a deliberate move to emasculate the male? Is it not because as Kaiser was saying earlier, and Solly equally, and even everybody really, as the platform was saying earlier, those traditional roles, they are not there anymore. And the man has to rebrand in order to stay relevant.
The traditional roles remain there, and that's another fallacy. The only reason why they don't want it right now in the context of the West, I always put it that way because it's not, I will never prescribe that for Africa. The reason why they can do that here in the West, because their population to them is okay. They don't need population. They have enough technology to suppress and control the world as they see fit. So they don't need to expand any further from that point of view. But in terms of that's also what the point I'm making is that the male role is not extinct, and the female role is not also not required anymore, because some societies need to procreate while other societies need more protection. And we can't say human beings are not facing any other threat. Just because it's not necessarily the kind of threat we used to face before doesn't mean it still doesn't exist. There's so many things that wants to destroy human beings that men are more equipped to take the risk and deal with. So,
could you, sorry, Tunaja, can you locate your position to geographical locations? Because the traditional male roles that you are describing, they're still very much the form and the template for third world countries and traditionally spaces like some parts of the Middle East and spaces like that. But within the Western Hemisphere, is there a need for the traditional male role that you're advocating?
If I'm not their friend, I'll whisper it. There is no need. But if I'm their friend, I will say, of course there is, because I don't want them to be strong. Why would I want? Let them downgrade their masculine role and let the women take over and make the men completely useless, so that other people will get stronger. So I would wish them that if they want to do that. After all, they are the ones that are trying to inflict it on the world, and it's up to us not to reject it. They have the luxury to do it. That's the truth of the situation. They are quite strong in terms of their security and financial and all the rest. They are quite strong, so they can afford to do it. But even when they are this strong, you can see there's already a pushback that this is not good for us. We have to turn the tide back. They've already, if you saw what happened in America, they reversed the Roe v. Wade law, something that even in my own big, this highest skepticism, I didn't think they could do that. But they did it because they know now that they need to roll this stuff back. When stuff hits the fan, this will know how to respond. So from my take is that I think the traditional role is still relevant. The issue was that I think this stuff came from the 60s, and you have to ask yourself, why would the Chinese want to downgrade, start having less children? Because they believed in the 60s or maybe after that period that the population cannot go beyond a certain point, because there was that narrative in the scientific world. There was a serious debate then, just like they are debating climate change then about population. People really believe that if we go to 8 billion, the whole world is going to implode. They never thought about vertical farming. They never thought about all these ingenuities, 3D printing, and all the rest that people are doing now. So that is where this stuff came from, and because of it, they felt that they can reduce the birth rate. I've been involved in such debate before, where we talked about what are the ways to reduce birth rate in societies. And in the West, the way they do it, they do it indirectly. They make having a child very expensive, very laborious, very difficult, so that it reduces the birth rate by default. So, and that is what they've achieved. The question now is the main question is that the pushback is now happening. Should we go back, start at least move to an extent back to the traditional male role? I think we should, because when you shift too far away from and too fast away from what nature has taken.
One second, Niger. You're missing a really big point. You keep talking about this and that. The reason why we can't move back is because of capitalism, right? The neoliberals and the capitalists decided that women after the war were necessary for an economy to function, for them to obviously increase their profit. So it's not a simple case of us going back, because we can't, right? Because now women are fundamental to the Western capitalism.
But if that is the case,
sorry, in your response to Niger, describe for us in a household traditional roles as you understand it, as you go on to what Kaiso just said.
Yeah, traditional roles as I see it is going to work, provide food, and provide security for the home when it is needed, mentoring the children to understand the rules of the various genders, and they support your children and they support your community.
What's the role of the woman in that family structure?
The role of the woman in that family structure is quite similar, but in terms of primary is childbearing, taking care of the home, supporting the community, and generally it's local based, not necessarily
what about income? What about income?
Income, I think that's the one I differ from the old traditional role. I think income, women should be given the ability to have income, that's the ability to earn income, and based on the current era that we are living in.
In that family structure, should the man restrict the woman from earning more than him in the traditional structure?
No. See, the structure I have in mind is very different from what most people think. What I have in mind is childbearing can happen earlier, and the woman can be with the man and all the rest of it. But in the period when the child starts growing up, the woman can do whatever she needs to do to even gain more education. By 40, 45, she's free of that child. She can go and do whatever she likes. Because right now is the opposite. They have the woman in the childbearing ages, and when they can fully take care of the children, they are busy walking away. And then when the child is grown up, they are basically not doing anything anymore. And
are you taking cognizance of the economic demands of contemporaneous times? Because no matter what your income, you live to your lifestyle. Okay, let's use the example of a lawyer. You're a lawyer, so you earn to that lawyer level. You are the male. So your lifestyle, of course, to that level as well. So now, in that traditional role, it's either that your lifestyle is able to support the totality of your family structure, or you need a second income. And now that second income can only really be provided by your wife. So if your wife equal measure earns as much as you, then your traditional role is ebbed away.
Yes, and that is where the macro level comes in. That's the this thing, what the agenda of the society comes into being. Because if you want to maintain a healthy population that is growing and a stable family structure, you can't have that kind of situation occur where both sides are beginning to function as if they are the same genders. If you do that, you are going to have a situation whereby the families will become misaligned, they will break up, because these things have been taking they've taken millions of years to form. And if you misalign it, then you have this situation whereby you have single parent homes and you have all the pushback that we are getting right now. I don't see why we should do that. I think Kezo talked about capitalism and why they need more people in the market. There's no reason why, if the population is growing, you can still have more people in the workforce to make as much money as they seriously want. So the argument of that they need and the female can still go back to the workforce, even by my own definition, because the Western societies now, life expectancy is going up to 80 years. By the time you finish taking care of a child at 40, 45, what are you doing anymore?
Then she works for the rest of the 40 years and goes to agree.
Exactly. You can use it to serve the society and make a lot of money for the capitalists as much as you want.
Oh my goodness me.
Wrap it up. Let's circulate.
Yes. Let's circulate and take that conversation on to. You can tell that Kaizo is a man used to being in charge. Let's circulate it and take the conversation to Hassan Valiant. So Hassan, we are talking about traditional roles. So we are abandoning politics this time around because, of course, the politics is over. We have a winner. But we're talking about traditional roles and what the role of a man is. Not traditionally, but in contemporaneous times, in the here and now. Because what we knew as a man who goes to the farm and then the wife stays in the house looking after the children and cooking, those roles are not there anymore, because every single society, they necessarily need 2 incomes to support a family. So now the role of the man now is starting to change. But men, especially young men, they are struggling with tradition and what contemporary times is demanding of them. So what is your understanding of that space, Hassan?
Yes, thank you very much. Hope everyone is doing well and is in good spirits. Well, you see, one man, the way I've seen all these things, because I heard you when you said that this is particularly a millennial problem. Anyway, it's the millennials that are having to have to deal with this. What I would say is, from the way I see it from here in Nigeria, where what is the norm is the traditional upbringing. The way I see it is that there are 3 to 4 elements to why this thing is all happening the way it is, and it is impacting people, and there's a pushback right now. Okay, there is an element to it which has got to do with the economy. I've had some people talk about how this is linked with the capitalist system. There's also an element to it that has to do with the institution of family in itself, and we cannot also, and take our eyes away from a kind of move of not only, power. People use tools to get power. You cannot ignore the political influence that the feminist movement have, and the kinds of buttons that they have pushed from an ideological, philosophical level to, the traditional, places where power has been reserved in this new world order. You can say that they are chief advocates, apart from the Western countries themselves, is where the top policy is being made on trade and family. You see, just look at the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, and then take your time also to critically look at the SDGs too, which is what is in play now. And you look at organizations like UN Women, IOM, these people are the ones that are forming policy for what they want the world to look like. And I think at the base of these decisions are most especially economic considerations. Okay, this is the way I see it. You see, for me, what I see is that this is an aberration in reality, because if you look at the
hold on, Hassan. I'm not sure that you should look at it as an aberration. because it's been here now for 20 odd years, and it continues to get that momentum. Me ASP was just telling us about the new wave of feminism. So the gains that they had from the suffragette movement to date, they are now enhancing it with a new set of demands. So the traditional male role is dead and gone, never to be seen anymore. But how do we pick from it for contemporary times, Hassan?
Well, you see, the way I see it is that if you want to really understand whether this is a very good thing or a bad thing, okay, I think you should look at the progress that we have made. Just look at the statistics. Especially in the United States, this has not hit people in your generation. I would say it has hit people in my generation more. So I'm talking about this because even if you look at the statistics, millennials are the ones that when they are born, they've had to face serious economic hardships. I know millennials, they have the lowest home ownership of adults in the United States. And that is also almost the same story all across Europe, or less in countries, those Scandinavian countries where they have a very good, social net where you can be, protected. And this problem is spreading all over, even in Nigeria. We know that generations of our fathers, they had it very easy. And this the system, we have faced serious economic crisis. You see, the collapse, the 2008 economic recession in the United States. There was another one that was also caused by COVID. The World Bank, the Federal Reserve has had to, pump money into a failing economic model that seems to be pinching the millennials downwards.
All right. So sorry, Hassan. Sorry, Hassan. Hassan, can you hear me? Sorry, just that space that you are.
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you suggesting that the two crises that you've described, the credit crunch and the COVID-19, are you saying then that those two major incidents, they've remortgaged your future and taken the money that should have gone to your generation to build a life to insulate the mistakes of previous generations? Is that what you're suggesting?
Definitely, I see it that way because there is a positive correlation between when these things happen and how the lives of millennials was impacted. So even as it is right now, okay, the policymakers are beginning to understand that there is a problem because it's not easy to fight against laws, but laws that have significant pushbacks in society usually are not laws or policies that sit well with human beings. Somebody said right here that you see, as human beings, these roles that we have, the traditional roles, took millions of years for us to evolve and then settle it. The way we do things, it's there has to be a balance between modernity and what we are as human beings. Our social life matters a lot. Suicide rates are going up, unhappiness is going up. School shootings, like in the United States where things like that are happening. You go to Japan, for example, suicide rates are high. Why do you think there was never a time, that these things were so rampant? Depression, mental health issues just go down. The happier, the lower you go, say, come down from octogenarians downwards. And when you get to people who are in their 30s, then you begin to see the level of mental health, the problems are plenty downward. I don't know if some of you have looked at it from that angle. That's just the way I see it. I think I may be speaking too much.
Well, all right, thank you, Hassan. You've not spoken so much, you've spoken elegantly. Somebody equally, hopefully to speak elegantly, we're joined by Nilotic Jonta, who I'm sure is from the stables of Kaizo. So Nilotic Jonta, you're up next. The conversation wrapped around the traditional male roles and its place in contemporaneous times, that are the roles that a man was defined by 30, 20 even years ago and further, which were traditional roles that stood for generations, they don't seem to have space now in contemporary times. And the contemporaneous male, the man in his mid-20s, the late to mid-20s thereabout, he's somewhat at a crossroads, conflated with the tradition that he was brought up with, and what contemporaneous society is demanding of him. So that male role, the space that is being spoken to and tutored by Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuel somewhat. So to that space, your thoughts on that, and Nilotic, John Tarr. Nilotic, yeah, good to have you.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly, carry on.
Yeah, okay, thank you for having me on your platform, and thank you for actually having like a intellectual space for Africans. Some channels on this panel have tried, but have failed. So I want to thank you for actually succeeding on doing that.
No, we are following Kaisil's tail. Carry on.
Yeah, when it comes to your question, I was going to say, I think it's a question of what post-industrialized society looks like and how it has greatly affected gender roles. Because you guys say Western countries, but really, I think the way you should look at this gender issue is based on industrial countries and non-industrial countries. So you see, in most of the third world, it's still a patriarchy because these societies are still mainly rural and still mainly like not industrialized. So the males still have most of the earning potential. But in an industrialized society, the women can earn. Women's earning potential like actually increases by some have estimated up to like 70% more from in terms of like closing the gap between male and female earning potential. So in that case, I do think like when the woman can pay for most of the same things, when she can provide for herself, like why does she need to do more, like why does she need to go do the housework and all that stuff? And like men haven't provided the answer to that question. And I think the only option you guys have is to just look, if you can't out earn your woman by at least times 3, you can't tell a shit in terms of like asking her to be the type of woman that your grandmother is.
Okay.
You don't have the earning potential to.
Sorry, Nilotic, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, stay where you are for a moment, because there are two things you said that I wanted you to expand on a little bit more. And there's a bit of static coming from you, by the way, but probably where you are. But you are saying if you cannot out earn your woman, your woman, you said times 3, but let's leave times 3. But if you cannot out earn your woman, then you don't have the right to tell her to sit down. So that's the challenge against the traditional male role in contemporary times, right there and there. So now a lot of family situations have it to be the situation that the woman out earns, even within the African space, especially more so the African space living in diaspora. It's the case that the woman out earns the man. So now, are you then saying that man then should consider himself emasculated if it's not out earning his woman, or should he redefine his masculinity to fit in with the reality of the times that he finds himself in?
Well, to be fair, I think the African situation is different because in Africa, most of these, let's be honest, African societies are not the most like secure societies, or like we don't have the best police system. So therefore, a woman is going to be far more reliant on a man for her, I would say, like free protection, or in that like having a chaperone of a man is also more beneficial in the African context, where in Europe, where the police systems are efficient and like society is far more peaceful, and like the average woman in Europe doesn't need a man for day-to-day protection because the police force is her and the government that protects her. So yeah, it's different. There's also a second context onto that. So I would just say, look, when the context changes, you have to bargain differently. So you as a man are going to probably have to do some things for yourself Like, it's not just the woman doesn't have to do every housework, but there also has to be some level of like understanding on her spending as well. So you're going to have to, I don't know, you guys are going to have to at least merge your earning potential and also like negotiate your social life on a, I don't know, like let's say 60-40 split, or six, like 2/3 to 1/3 type of power split in terms of decision making.
Or you could just dust up your passport. So the modern black male, Western modern black male, who is not willing to make those adjustments that we're discussing, he's discovered his passport now and is traveling to other countries where traditions are still being upheld. So the passport bro, a necessary evolution of the modern woman, Nilotic.
As a proud, as someone who is economically Pan-African, but like socially, I'm a proud tribalist. I can't sponsor any man wanting to marry or procreate outside of his own, race. That's a bit cowardly.
Wow, that's a new space to enter. But thank you. Good to meet you. So that's Nilotic Junta, is one of our Kaiser's friends. Yeah.
If you like me to push back on some of the things my brother just said, if you don't mind.
No, carry on, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I quite agree with a lot of things. Although the last one was, I didn't see that coming. So
that's far right wing.
I don't think I would go as far as to say the things you said. You also made note of the fact that in this space we were characterizing the evolution of gender roles based on the things that we see in the West as opposed to the things that we see elsewhere. I would not go as far as to say that we were might not have gotten it right in that characterization. And here's the reason. Apart from, I understand your point of view, coming from the post-industrialized era. However, I would like to also, point and bring your attention to a few things. It's not that we are, ignoring the fact that there's an overlap with the post. Yes, there's an overlap with the post-industrialized era. But if you look at other economies, for example, if you look at South Africa, for example, you mentioned Africa. If you look at South Africa, for example, South Africa cannot be characterized as non-industrialized. It is actually industrialized, if you agree with me. I think recently they also joined with forces with the BRICS, and so it's not, and yet they maintain their traditional gender roles. I would also like to also mention the cases of China, for example. China is as far as we are concerned, we would all of us would most of us will agree, and we argue that China is a heavily industrialized society and a highly technologically driven society, and yet we still see them maintain traditional gender roles. In fact, in the US, for example, it's it's already part of the statistics from the Pew Research Institute. They also say things about the marriage rate, or the rate of marriage between the races, and on top on the list are the Asian communities. So which tends to suggest that that perhaps there's something that they still hold on to dearly, which endears them to other races of group. Because when you look at those even interracial marriages, they are still also top of the on the poll. And you find that men, even African American men, when they also choose, even Caucasian European American men, they also go, sometimes if they're going to go interracial, they tend to choose from the Asian community as well. And they tell you things like, for example, I don't like to go into the passport bros space, but it seems my Oga here, he likes the passport bros, he likes to mention it. You'll discover that even among the passport bros, there's a lot of there's a lot among that community who patronize places like in the Philippines. They patronize places like, I mean, in South Asia, and you have a lot of them flocking over down there. And one of the things they will tell you is that they find those women, to be more feminine. They find them to be more compliant. They find them to be more, traditionally driven in a traditional role, and they can get along with them. And those are one of the things. And it is in these same spaces you find places like Singapore, and Singapore, is a highly industrialized area too. So that is one of the reasons why we might not, characterize it as, or rather, we might not, pin it to the post-industrialized era. It's something that has to do, is peculiar to the West, and it's kind of really, it has really, pushed a lot of men, to make decisions like, one of the things is like the passport bro is a direct response to some of the things, some of the cry and the yearnings of men in the West to find an alternative solution to establishing more traditional gender roles.
Can I answer that?
No, sorry, I was bringing you back in.
I must say the last speaker made a lot of sense. I have to add.
Yes, let Nilotic counter that, and then we're going to Ajahn Lekoko. Yeah, go on, Nilotic.
Okay, I'll make my response quick. Look, when we look at this gender relation, I think we have to look at it for what its end goal should be, and that's for procreation of children and raising them in the best possible environment. And both the West and East have failed in that. And my answer to that is, okay, in the West, we know why it has failed. Feminism, you can say whatever. In the East, it's just too expensive to raise a family. Like, look at all these Eastern economies that you praise. Like, all of them are dying off quickly. Like, you realize by 2050, China is only going to be 1 billion people. Japan is also going to be like, I think in 2050, like 60% of its people are going to be like over 50 years old or something. Like, those are ancient societies, bro. These people are dying off. So they have both failed. And so I think we need to look at it and say, how can we develop from an African context? And how can we industrialize while also maintaining a healthy and young population growth that can, keep expanding and not dying off? I think that's the end goal of male-female relationship, not just that your woman has, is a feminist or not. Who cares about that? I think that should be the end goal. And there's no society that has managed to achieve to both industrialize and also answer that question. And I'm saying in the African context, we should look at it and see what we can do to answer that question, and solve that puzzle.
All right, brilliantly put, Nilotic John Tar. So Nilotic John Tar, but the man of excellence who always cuts through the BS and tells you just exactly as it is. So Ajahn Lekoko, we've abandoned our politics for this session to speak to the wider topic of the male role in contemporaneous times, and especially the young contemporary Black male, who is somewhat at a crossroad, trying to define what his masculinity is. So this confused space, your take, Ajahn Lekoko.
Thank you, one man. Greetings to our listeners around the world. Click on the like button, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so. The traditional role of a male in a family setting is to take the position of a leader and a father. A leader and a father that can live by example. He should be able to lead the family well and have the wife contribution and input into every decision that they are making for the family. The family value must be protected. particularly in African context. We know what our family values are.
Ajale Koko, is it still possible to be a single income family in this day and age?
No, it's not possible. It's not possible. The role of even in African context, women doesn't sleep at home, doesn't stay at home. They work. The man and woman must go out to work and pull the resources together to raise their family well, raise their children, and position them well for greater challenges of the future. And we raise them in such a with that family value in terms of religion and respect for culture and tradition, practice the culture and tradition, and have that patriotic and be patriotic to their society. So, but the modern days children doesn't want to practice African culture anymore. They don't even want to be mentored. They want to get their mentorship via internet and social media. And that is not respected. That is not helping the.
But Ajale Koko, that is not going to go away though. So how does the traditional roles marry up to that? How does because the social media is here to stay. We only started with Hotmail just about 10 years ago, and now you don't even know 10% of what is available or in terms of platforms. So the social media continues to expand. Young people continue to engage with it, and that their life shaped around it completely. So how does traditional roles fit into now what seems to be the new norm?
Well, traditional role is very important for the elders in the society, particularly the government in the society, have a strong role to play. And in our school system, we have to introduce, we have to in the school curriculum, we must have some of the subjects that can teach these children the traditional culture and the tradition as well. Culture and our tradition and culture. For example, we should be able to have a way of teaching the children in their mother languages. Once we can introduce that, if we can achieve that, then we can begin to solve the problem of social media sweeping them away or rather we begin to prevent
Ajale Koko, is it a problem to be solved or a place to be embraced? Because a lot of people, they don't see it as a problem. They see it as an expansion of reach to take understanding to a wider space. So is it a problem to be solved or a space to be embraced? The traditional role mill is gone. I think we have to concede that.
No, it's not gone. It's because we just neglect it. And that is what is causing problem in our traditional marriage, if you can call it our traditional marriage institution whatsoever. So it is because we are abandoning our culture, we are abandoning our tradition, we are not raising our children well in compliance to our culture and tradition, and it's really the what they see in the social media, what they watch on the social media is totally taking them away from us. When I was growing up, I don't know what divorce means. I never seen any situation of divorce in any family that I grew up with, in my society, in our where I live and grew up. I never seen a mother and father divorce or anything like that. But in today's society where we live in, it's like a normal situation. And what is the cause of that? Is because we try to copy the Western way of life. We want to do things in the way they do things, and most of these things, our women sees it, and our boys as well. They watches this on social media. They act irrationally in that direction, and it's really killing the traditional marriage or traditional marriage institution. So what I think we can do as a society is to try as much as possible to raise our children in line with our culture, our tradition, and introduce it to them as well in the school. So when they grow up in the school, knowing their tradition well, and they can speak in their own language, and we can begin to.
Ajanle Koko, you see that there are two spaces that you mentioned there, and I was with you when you mentioned the first space, but the second space might be a problem. So if you're saying to teach traditional values and then you teach it at home, then that's one thing. But in the educational institutions, you will struggle to introduce traditional values to educational institutions, because those traditional values, they've now been rebranded as misogynistic and anti-women and anti-LGBTQ and all of that. So what the educational institutions are doing now is to craft a new narrative that encompasses all of those feminism, gay rights, animal rights, and all rights that were trodden on by the traditional male. So you would struggle to get traditional male roles as we used to know it as a template for educational institutions. Is the antithesis of what they are promoting now.
No, we can't struggle. We are African. What you are referring to is practice in the Western world. We don't have to practice. We don't have to run our school system the way Western world run their own school system. So if we really want to save our society and the future of our society and keep our culture, the tradition, and want to keep it running and going, stronger for the future, we must be able to have a school system that can teach our children moral instruction and all the value African of African culture and the tradition. And we should be able. We should do away with teaching even them. We should have English as just a subject, a language they can just teach. If we can have all the subjects teach in our mother tongue, that will help them to grow up to value their culture and tradition, and that can really shape, shape them well for a better future as well. So if we look at some other culture like that of Arab countries, you see them, the way they protect their custom and their tradition well, and you don't see cases of divorce or all these immoral, all sort of immorality that you see in the West, and we see African countries copying and destroying themselves. You cannot see it over there because they define their system, the way they are governed, the way they define everything, the way they live their life, and the kind of educational system they run. Everything is defined in accordance to their culture and tradition, and that's why they're still able to maintain their culture and tradition, and you don't see all this rascality that you see in the West over there. So even if you go to Abuja now, record shows that the number of people that file for divorcee after marriage it's alarming. It's alarming. I don't know what divorce mean when I was growing up. I've never seen it. I've never seen any family that divorced when I was growing up. But it's alarming. It's everywhere now. It's like you want to buy a pancake and chips, or you want to buy ice cream. That's the way it is in our world today. And all this thing is caused by, us as a society, bad leadership that cannot guide the society well and raise the children well in such a way that they can understand the culture and tradition well. And everything that we want to do or raise our children is in line with the culture and tradition of the West. And it's really killing us as society. So I think we have to go back to the root. If we don't do that, we will destroy our future as people and will be swept away by Western culture. Example is what we saw with Gbadebo that wanted to be governor of Lagos State but could not speak Yoruba. And we have a lot of people in Nigeria raising their children in that manner as well. They don't speak Yoruba to their children. They don't speak their local dialect to their children. And it's just unfortunate. And it will affect us in every spectrum of our society if we don't stop it. So that's my take on that one, man.
All right, brilliant. Always brilliantly put. I did tell you to wait for Ajan Lekoko, so you see why now. So that's Ajan Lekoko cutting through the nonsense and telling us how it is. But a man that's probably contending with that space as Solomon. So Solomon, you are up next to the conversation. Your contribution, Solomon, is it?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, thank you for this topic, and thank everybody. I thank everybody for their contributions so far. Baba Aja really said what I want to hear, and see everybody here. They all spoke well, but Baba Aja he just spoke in the practical, like in the practical aspect, like in reality, as an African man and as a Nigerian. Do you understand? We other people were here talking about industrialization and all that. See, in Nigeria here, there are people, they are their husband. The industrialization is about how the betterment for a better life, right? But in Nigeria here, there are people, even if we're not really industrialized in this part of the world, but there are people who their husband work their ass off and provide for them everything, and still yet they mess up in the marriage. So for me, what I believe about concerning this stuff is, you as a man, you self-actualization, you have to realize yourself, you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself as a young person, as a man. You don't need to do things based on peer pressure and all that. You know yourself and build character, build your character. You have to know your build character by getting like setting values. You should be a valuable person before you start talking of even going to get involved in a relationship, then talking about marriage. Because these things, there are steps to this thing. You don't just rush them. You see certain people, they just feel like it's not just only about getting money. Money is very important, but not just get your personal life, your character. You have to build it. You have to set up certain standards that, yeah, look at it. When you want to get into a relationship, you say these are look at the kind of woman you want, and you make yourself in a way that you be the prize. To be honest with you, woman, I have listened to everybody here, but Baba Jags has really touched the most part. And the things I really want to say, and for that, the first talk, the first thing he talked about in Abuja, just in January here, we had 4,000 divorce cases in January 2023. 4,000 divorce cases, and these things are caused by maybe it's not just really about the financial aspect. It may be the way the man behaves or behaved in the marriage, or the way the girl, they did not just they were ignorant. You see people of nowadays, out of ignorance, they just get involved and say that they are getting married and all that. But they don't really, some of them don't even know themselves. The guy don't know himself, the girl don't know herself, and they just get in. Then from there, when they get into that relationship or that marriage, when they get married, you see them start getting pissed and start hating themselves, because they did not take out their time to look into character.
Can I just interject in one spot?
Yeah.
Over 80% of divorces are because of finances. It's just the minority that is about the other, relationship issue, but it's majorly about finances.
But what will you say about like in the West there that you were talking about industrialization? Because women provide. See, I can tell you, when as a man, when you that knows himself, you can be with a woman and in the West there, and when she walks, I'm telling you the truth. When the level of self actualization you've attained, like knowing yourself and knowing like you're with a woman and you know how to treat a woman right and all that. See, that woman will earn her salary and she will even come and give it to you in your hand. You really want to tell her what to do with that money. Do you understand? It's not just I don't want to just go into the financial aspect, but you as a man, how have you worked on yourself before going into a relationship, before going into a marriage? So let's not just talk about
Solomon, if you are saying the man should work on himself before going into a relationship, a lot of men might end up unmarried because you are never really fully prepared to get married. You will never really get the finances to where I'm talking on average, the majority. You never really get your finances to the spot that you feel comfortable enough to marry. And then to find the woman that fits the mold of who your wife is going to be, you would have to make some compromises at some point. Because there's this thing they called the what was it called again? It's named after it's one of those concepts. There's a concept around it anyway. It's one of those Freudian concepts. Oedipus complex. Yes, it's called Oedipus complex. So there's the thing to say you want to. So Oedipus was a Greek god who killed his father to marry his mother. So it's a mythological thing. But what that Oedipus complex is telling you is that every man wants to marry a woman in the image of their mother. So that's not to say a woman that looks like a mother, but a woman that in presentation, in mannerism, in outlook of life is very similar to your mother. So it's called the Oedipus or Oedipus complex, depending on your accent. So you would never really find a woman that fits that mold fully, and you never really get your finances to that spot. So it's a lot of compromises, Solomon, to get to.
Well, one man in that self-actualization, where you as a man you've known yourself, you will know, you will be able to, then you can be able to know the kind of woman. She might not really be somebody of somebody that maybe that have attained the same level of, no, it might be some, you will just know that you as a man, you're positioned to be a leader. It's not like you will just be somebody that no, but you know that, look, you are supposed to be the captain in any relationship you be in, or in any marriage, and it will help you watch out for, like, there are some women that, should I use the word naive, or they are growing, but they don't really have direction, but they are open to learn and to do. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So
if I can interject, maybe you are talking about in Africa, but in the West, the way the society is structured, women don't really respect men. Doesn't matter if the man is making more than them or the man is making less. In general, they don't respect men.
That is why I said you don't need to go for. It's not every woman that come across.
Majority of the women.
You have to. This self-actualization is as in knowing who you need, or maybe should I use who you need, or who you want, or who is right for you. Like it is very possible. If solely for real, it's not every woman that even if you have a fling with any of them, but you will still watch out for character, as in for some certain attributes to then from there you can be able to say, oh, I think I can work with this person. So that is what I mean by you. That is still part of the self-actualization. It's not every woman you come across, because sometimes you see people, they're just ignorant of the kind of ladies that come around. They just feel like is even the, will I say, the secondary things that they that makes them get involved. They don't look at the basic things. You need to look at the basic things, and it's going to help you, to be honest with you, to be able to point out whether this person is somebody that you can work with.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Go.
I have a few things.
But what I wanted to say is, but that is the way you are saying it. You are looking at the perspective of someone who is spoiled for choice. But what is going on in the West is that majority of these women are going for 10 to 20% of the men, right? Only these men have the ability to choose, start looking at the woman's character, start looking at what she's doing. Majority of the men just take what they get. Over 30% of men have not had sex in the last 1 to 3 years, or majority of them are still virgins. That is the situation that is going on in the West. You know, so you just take what you get. So these women behave anyhow, they talk anyhow, they disrespect men because they know that these men have no choice. That's if this man is not willing to lie to her, not willing to kill himself to give her whatever he wants, guaranteed before the end of today, she can find another man that will replace her with all these apps, with all these things. So the rise of simps is growing higher and higher and higher.
Okay, Solomon, please, can I chime in? Can I chime in before you?
Before you chime in, let's bring in Prince's voice, because I wanted to make this a short session, because I'm doing a second session which is going back to our traditional politics something. But I was only really bringing this conversation to see if the space has an appetite for it, and it looks as though this space does have an appetite for it. But let's hear Prince's take. Prince Daddy. All right, let's hear Bishop. Bishop, are you there? All right. Can anyone still hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
I can hear you. Can I? Okay.
All right. So Bishop, come into the conversation. So we were talking about the conflation, the confusion for the modern man, brought up on traditional values, but our contemporary times have different demands.
Yes, thank you so very much. Let me join Ajale Gogo to say, please, if you have not liked, subscribe and share. Very topical issue, very serious topic to say. I want to start by saying we have a very big problem on our hands. There is a saying, I don't know where it originated from. If you want to destroy a people, first destroy their culture. When you want to destroy people's culture, start from their language. I like the fact that Ajale Koko emphasized so much about culture and tradition. What you have said is just saying it as it is. But the question is, where did we go wrong? Let's start by trying to define culture. I would just say it's totality of man's life, everything that has to do with a man. We have our way of life, which is, principally the way people have come to live their lives, and they have derived benefit from it. The challenge began when the West tried as much as possible. I don't mind industrialization when it was coming, but when they came with a lot of things, religion and the rest, and displaced our culture, and the feminism aspect of it, and the human right, in quotes now, that is being defined in such a way that you're always struggling to have an understanding of what do we really mean by human rights, because we relegated the values, the human value, because there is an hierarchy. There is an hierarchy. Even in the animal kingdom, there is an hierarchy. Whether we want to believe it or not, the male factor is still the male factor. It's a dominant male, and it was created like that for a purpose. I want to digress with I want to differ a little bit.
Hold on. You are saying the male factor is still the male factor, and it was created for a purpose. But the traditional male role was defined really by the physicality of the male strength over other species. But that physicality of strength is no longer needed in contemporary times. So you don't need the strong man to do whatever it is that a strong man traditionally did. And that role now has to redefine with a softer tone.
Unfortunately, that is what modernization has made us to believe. Because I will say a man is still a man. Unfortunately, there is a reversal, or how do I call it now, of roles now because of the westernization that I just spoke about a minute ago. So, if we want to use the Bible that says that God created them male and female, and He gave everyone a role to play, no matter how in the traditional setup that I grew up from, and no matter how successful you are as a woman, there is still that aspect of submissiveness, because the man is regarded as the head of the family. Even if you are making 3 times what the man is making, that is the tradition. And there are lots and lots of things that go.
Hold on. If the woman is making 3 times what the man is making, does the man have the moral authority to still demand traditional male roles?
Let me make that very clear. It is a reality. It doesn't always happen that way. I'm saying, let's assume the man as farmer and the wife is a trader in a real traditional setting, and somewhere along the line, the wives happen to, there's something we use in Yoruba, or GC, hit it more and kind of providing a little bit more than what the husband is bringing home. It is only the 2 of them that will know. Others outside will not know that the wife is actually bringing more to the table. That husband. Am I still with you? Hello?
Yeah, carry on. We're listening.
So that's what I call the traditional setting. And let me put it better. Let me put it this way: the traditional African setting, and a lot of responsibility that comes on and is shared, depending on the capacity of the woman to contribute to the home. So there is still that aspect of being submissive to the man. If the wife defers to the man as the head of the family, unfortunately, the feminism and the westernization and the civilization has eroded practically everything that women. You were making reference to 20 years ago. I think the generation actually started way before then, before the 20 years ago. And I would say the arrival of westernization has done more damage to our cultural values that we can imagine.
Is the erosion, is it irrevocable? Is it irrevocably so? Is it a case of accept it?
Do you mean irreversible, right?
Yes, irreversible rather, yes.
Yeah, to a great extent, I would say yes, unfortunately so. Because it has actually really gotten worse in this, past 20 years now, from the 2000, it's gotten horribly worse.
Do you think we should redefine the traditional roles that we're teaching our children now? Because we cannot imbue them with the roles and values that we were imbued with, because of course, like you said, irreversibly, irrevocably, the world has changed. So we cannot cling on to the past when the past is gone.
Yeah, well, we can say the past is gone, but our world is getting worse for it. That's the truth. Some people will look back in years back, how they grew up, and the only thing they have is just the memory, nostalgic memory of at one point in time in our life.
Is that necessarily a bad thing?
It is. Yes, sir, it is. It is. I mean, that's my view. It is. I knew how I grew up. I knew how many miles, even though my father could afford to take us to school once in a while, but I had to trek to school. I went to schools about 4 miles or thereabout from my home. And I would trek. I knew when I go to some instances, the way we relate with families and relations and the rest, and the things you learn from these experiences, go and spend time with.
Would you rather the world did not have the internet, women's rights, rights for minorities in terms of sexuality and skin color, all of that? Are you saying that those things are bad things?
I would say when we're supposed to take a step back and be careful, we did not, because every good thing comes with some certain degree of that is subject to abuse. Okay, that's better put. Every good thing can be abused, no matter how good the intentions are. Unfortunately, it's placed the world on our hands.
Do you think gay people should have rights?
One man, what rights don't they have?
No. Let's answer that question.
You are entering into a very very tricky area.
No. You know what why I asked that question is that a lot of these things were better in days of old. Tradition is being eroded and all of that. If we look at it's rose-tinted glasses, isn't it? It's rose-tinted glasses. Because if we look to the past, where women were subjugated and relegated to the kitchen, the LGBTQ community were stoned on the streets, children were spoken to and not heard from, and everything was just on a manual, rudimentary level. And then we've evolved now into these contemporaneous times where there is more equality of the gender. There's a recognition of the presence of minority groupings and their rights to be so, and then there's technology that has shrunk the world into a global space, and people have more options in life. All of these things, they've evolved a new space that's moved us away from traditional roles.
Let me just ask you one question: is the world better off today than it was then?
Well, I'll say yes. Probably you say no.
Yes, absolutely. I'll say no. And I'll say no, and I'll tell you why I'll say no. Now we are raising children. We are almost totally erasing the middle ground of the kind of sensibilities or the kind of children you want to. And I'll tell you what I mean. Maybe we have 20% in the up that are extremely very brilliant and and what we want to call it, tech savvy, whatever. And we have like 10%. Okay, let's say we have 10% in the up, we have 20% in the middle, and we have like the remaining 70% in the bottom. They have access to the same internet. They have access to the same facilities the world has, given us now. But what are they making of it? You see we see people with different content, but by the time you rate the content, what people are making of it, you realize that they are destroying their lives. This technology.
All right. We're losing you, Bishop. No, we can't hear you. Static. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
All right, we've lost you a bit. Let's hear from.
Now?
We can't. Yeah, go on. Try now. Have we lost you? Yeah, we have lost you. Let Ajanle Koko have the final word on that space. So, Ajanle, no, we've lost you. It's just static we're hearing now.
One man, please, can I just piggyback on what Mr. Solomon said? It's important that I just want to just chime in before Baba comes in.
All right. Chime in. Ajanle Koko, wrap it up, and then we go to another session. We'll wrap this up because I just wanted to introduce to see if we have a taste for this sort of conversation.
I would also like to add something, given everything that I've heard. I'll make it short too.
One of the things.
All right. So ASAP, and then to Niger, and then Ajanle Koko wrap it up because I've pushed back the time of the next session to just a few times. Carry on.
Again, I would like to thank you because we're already seeing an evidence of why this kind of space is needed. Solomon, I don't know what time you actually came into the program, but before you came in, Solly had already, and one man had already been discussing along the line, and there was a train of thought. There was a context in which you were discussing. So they were discussing from the Western point of view. It wasn't necessarily because it seems that you are coming from the Nigerian context. It wasn't that we were discarding that. It's just that we were not, focusing on that area. And so it's not as if we were saying things that were contrary to what Baba was saying. Baba was speaking from the cultural point of view, especially as it pertains to Nigeria. So you cannot appropriate the things that we will find in Nigeria and then say, okay, those things will scale up to things that we find in the Western world. And that's what Solly was even trying to reiterate and say that those things that you are talking about, they are not obtainable here. For example, I wish Kaiser, what's his name again? Mr. Kaiser, right? Or something. Kaizo. So, Mr. Solomon, I hope you're listening to me. Now, Kaizo was saying some things before you came in. You have to understand, and I want you to please try to put yourself in the shoes of those in diaspora, because I think am I correct? Are you in Nigeria right now, sir?
Yes.
Exactly. So now the angle from which the previous speakers were speaking from was from a diasporan point of view. That in the West, you see, the things that happen, Kaiser mentioned that he said a personal experience of his friend who traveled down to somewhere, maybe in Kenya or I don't know where whether Nigeria, and picked a lady. He specifically used this word, and I'm quoting him now. A dusty village. That was the word he used. He picked a lady from a dusty village, in Lagos. Now,
that's his term of. If you go to his platform, they call themselves the Dusties on his platform.
Okay. So that means that that friend went with the mind that the lady he was going to get from that village will be, number one, will be traditional. Number two, will be compliant. And number three, will be cooperative. She already, you don't need to train her already. She already knows the things that a traditional man wants. Everybody already knows their gender role. Now, here's what happened. He took her from wherever wherever they met, Kenya, Nigeria, I don't know, and brought her into the UK. Now, the UK runs on a different system. And when he brought her there, he said that according to him, the woman's, character changed. Now, the question I want to ask you, is it that their character changed overnight? Her character didn't change overnight. It was the new system she found herself in that she adjusted into. The new system, affords her the opportunities, the incentives to take advantage of things that she would ordinarily not find at her disposal in Africa. And so that's why I said this thing is a systemic issue that is not has nothing to do with maybe we're not saying that traditional rules don't apply. And that's why Kaiser was suggesting one of the things, and I know he's coming from the angle of the passport bro. He has already even acknowledged that he is a passport bro. That most of the time when you pick these women, you will want to maybe some people will suggest that you leave them where they are, because if you bring them to the West, if you bring them to the United States, a lot of stories we've heard that by the time they come into the West, they see the system, then you will not discover this woman was a traditional woman. What happened? It is the system. So it's if you look at Nigeria, for example, now when they are in Nigeria, a woman, and please, I don't want anybody to get me to misunderstand what I'm trying to say.
All right, bring it home, ASAP.
All right, so yeah. I believe in a pro-man, pro-woman egalitarian society, a society where, and I want to say, that I believe that Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, all of these countries, they represent, they still represent what it tends to, or rather they can, they have an atmosphere that, facilitates more traditional gender roles. And like Baba has said, one of the things we need to emphasize, is that we need to let our policy makers, be able to, imbibe cultural, things. For example, we see in the case of Goodluck Jonathan, where during the time he was living, there were pressure from.
All right, don't elongate it. I want to wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I just wanted to. It wasn't as if we were discarding those things. We were just talking about the Western, what obtains in the Western culture.
All right, brilliant. Well, so we have to bring this topic back, certainly. To Niger, come in.
Yeah, thank you. I think I subscribe to the school of where John Lekoko was coming from, that we need to tailor things to suit our own needs. I'm not exactly welded to having it resemble exactly what we used to have before. My focus is on our ability to exert ourselves and have power in this world. And I believe that if we subscribe to Western ways, just like us subscribing too early to clean energy and other things, it's going to damage us severely. And we should never do that. And we should embrace our traditions where it suits us best, especially when it comes to growing our population. Africa is a massive continent. I don't see any reason why every other part of the world, they use the small land they have and they occupy it like crazy. And they tell us that, you should remain small and remain as you are, so that they can come and take advantage of us eventually. So from that point of view, I would say we push back on the negatives, like all this LGBT drive and family planning stuff that they are trying to impose on us, until we get to a population or a power level that we can say, okay, we are truly a sovereign people in this world. You can't pull back when you have not exerted yourself in terms of power. Otherwise, you are just wishing your people your people's demise. Thank you.
All right, brilliant. So Ajan Lekoko, wrap up that space for us. So the modern man and how he should fit in.
Okay, thank you, woman, and thank you everybody for your contribution. They say charity begins at home, and that is why I was emphasizing on going back to the root. Let us go back to our own normal way of life, and that is the solution to the problem of our society, or we as people, problem that we are going through. You see, even though that we live here in the West, but for the reason that we don't even practice our own culture and tradition when we are back home. So we are lost entirely when we go to the West. So we just, our young one doesn't know what to do. They just scramble and they just fall into that trap of the Western way of life. And they got, trapped in that problem of the West. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that if we had a system that teaches us our culture and tradition, both at home and in the school system, that is what we will bring down. That mindset is what we bring to the West. And we always want to look back home on what to do when it comes to marriages. We know there are processes we have to go through before we get married. Before we get married in Yoruba land, you just don't see woman and just jump, oh, I'm marrying you and this thing, and boom, it's like that. It's not like that. Yes, you can see woman, but there are some certain investigations that have to be carried out by your parents on that woman that you want to marry, on that lady that you want to marry. They will carry out investigation, and the investigation, if you reveal that this is your wife, and that is what that you will pursue to marry. If the investigation says that no, this cannot be, this is going to be a disaster for your life, then you don't get into it, because marriage in African context, or let me say, mentioned in Yoruba particularly, and I believe that is what is applied to every other culture in Nigeria, is a lifelong partnership. It's everlasting partnership, and it's not contractual. It's not contractual at all the way it is in the West. It is everlasting. Once you get into it, there's nothing like divorce or whatsoever. It is not in our dictionary. We're married, and we marry for it, and we marry for life. That is it. And the marriage go beyond the two of you, both family from both sides. We got to know each other. We marry each other. We know each other, and we don't want to disappoint each other. That is the way marriage. But we don't know it. We don't practice it anymore, and that's right. Look at the Arabs. Look at their children. Because of they raise their children in accordance to their Islamic way of life. Even their children in the Western education, you see them, Western school, they cover up their head. They dress, you can easily identify them that this is from Islamic home. And that is how they were raised, and they grew up in that, with that culture, and they continue like that. When they get married, they will marry their fellow Muslim and Islamic person, and they raise their children like that, and they keep the religion going strong. But where is our own? Where's our own religion? Where is our own culture? We just allow the Western culture and tradition to just sweep us away, and that is why we are struggling, So that's my take. We have to go back to the root. That is the only way, the only solution to the problem that we are confronting in our marriages, particularly our young ones living in the West. So thank you, woman.
Oh, all right, brilliant, well put. So brilliantly put by Ajanle Koko. So brilliantly put by Ajanle Koko. So a lot of you, if you look in the comment section, you see that I've posted a link. So we are going to only take like about a 15-minute break or 10-minute break, and then we'll go back to the traditional Nigerian politics that we always talk about. So follow that link and come and join us for the conversations to come on. So yes, we've introduced this, and it looks as though there's an appetite for it. So follow the link in the comment section. The session carries on still. So we've introduced this, and it looks as though there's an appetite for it. So we'll introduce again on Thursday. So on Thursday, we'll be asking the question, LGBTQ and the African man. And I'm asking that question only really because there's a real push to introduce that LGBTQ culture to the African space. And there's a real pushback. As you know, the African space, very conservative, very traditional, as we've already discussed. So they're trying to introduce that LGBTQ thing to the African space. And there's a real push back against it. That push being championed especially by the Ugandan space and the Kenyan space, but really the whole of the West African sub-region. The American vice president, she was in Ghana just the other day trying to promote this LGBTQ narrative, and the Ghanaian president gave her short shrift. So that conversation now very much within the African paradigm. So we'll be discussing that on Thursday. The LGBTQ community and the African man. So we discussed that on Thursday as we start to expand our conversational space. But as I said, the conversation has not ended today. The link in the comment section takes you to where the conversation will continue. So I want to wrap this as just one standalone space so that I'll monitor the interactions with this particular session to see if it's a conversation that the space I would like to expand on. So come join us just in that link that I've left in the comment section. But I leave it here. Carry the conversation on with you in the comment section. But here I say, peace.